Hey, welcome to Two Doctors Homestead. My name's Daniel, and today we want to talk about long-term food storage pantries, a prepper pantry organization, where and how and what, and maybe a little bit with why you might want a deep pantry, right? A prepper pantry, long-term food storage pantry. I mean, you look at, we'll start with the why and kind of jump into the where, how, and what you might want in your pantry. As the why, I mean, it's really, you could say inflation if you want. You could just say prices are going up if you're more comfortable with that. But if you look at what you paid for food a year ago, food was cheaper then than it is now. And it's entirely possible food's going to be cheaper today than it will next year. It's always hard to predict the future, but we do know food was cheaper last year. So anything you had in your pantry last year that you still have today, you sort of saved money, right? Calories are an investment, and we need calories to survive. This is not going to live very long without some food. So we all need food to survive, right? So where and how? So shelves, funny, are useful, right? You know, whether you have room somewhere to put a shelving system in or you just use your existing pantry, shelves are important, right? When we didn't have this shelving system here, we just had everything piled up on the floor, and as you can imagine, that was a bit of a mess. So we had to come back. These were just shelves we got at Home Depot, but I replaced the shelving material it came with 3/4 inch plywood, and you can see now they hold a lot of weight. They were sagging quite a bit before, right? So shelving system is good. You don't want to just have your stuff piled up on the floor. If you don't have shelves, don't have room for a shelving system, you can look at things like plastic bins, right? Look at the space you have and the most ideal way to store any kind of long-term food supplies, long-term storage pantry. Environment is important on food storage. You want cool, dry place, limited direct sunlight, and there's been a lot of studies on that. Food stored in a cool, dry place is going to stay good, stay nutritious longer than a hot, wet place, right? You know, the same thing with sunlight. Too much direct sunlight will bleach out the nutrients in your food. It's had a lot of studies on that. University of Utah, other places, so that information is readily available. But I wanted to point that out. You want to go cool, you want to go dry, as much as you can. Meaning, a basement makes a better pantry than an attic. And if you don't have an attic or a basement, end of the day, you have to work with what you have, right? And try to make the best of that situation. In terms of organization, you know, we have our little pantry back here. We try to keep it organized. Organizing by food type is certainly good, right? You know, we have some tomatoes here. We've got some green tomatoes or diced tomatoes with green chilies over here, right? One thing you want to keep in mind is expiration dates. Things do expire. So as you're getting items, you want to look at the expiration date and do a rotation in your pantry, right? There's kind of three kinds of food pantries we're going to look at. You've got short-term, mid-term, long-term. You might not rotate your long-term stuff quite as much, but your short-term and mid-term, you're going to want to do rotation. And of course, when you're building up any pantry, buy the stuff you eat. If it's not something you want to eat or something you do eat, it's probably going to sit there, right? The odds of you eating it go down, and it might just sit there and expire. Expired food, if you can, there's always the option to donate it before it expires. So if you have something that's been sitting on the shelf for a year and it's a short or mid-term food storage item, right? We'll dig into those a little bit more. I'm just kind of throwing the terms at you. Maybe you donate it, right, instead of throwing it away, right? If it's something you haven't eaten, you're not interested in eating. I said there are tiers to it. So you want to rotate your food, you want to buy what you eat, right? So then we jump into what do you want to have in your pantry, and the obvious answer is buy what you eat. We already said that, but we can go a lot deeper than just saying, hey, go buy what you eat, you're good to go, guys, right? We do a video series, if you're not subscribed to the channel, if you're not familiar with the channel, called Prepper Pantry Pick of the Week, and every week we take you shopping with us, and we pick out an item or two. I think we've done 3 or 4 or 5, even 6 in a week, and we talk about each item, which is cost per calorie. That's important, right? We're all on a limited budget. Also shelf life, cost per calorie, and we try to touch on nutritional value as well, right? And where it's going to fit is your short-term pantry, your mid-term pantry, and your long-term pantry, right? So we go into that, and if you haven't watched the videos, certainly encourage you to. We enjoy making them, and it's always nice when people watch the videos we make, right? Certainly you can get that. We're not making money on this, so we're doing it One, because we enjoy it, and two, is we want to share information. I think a lot of people are not prepared. You see it all the time, and I'm not going to go too deep into that, but every time there's a storm, there's people rushing to the grocery store to get toilet paper and milk and bread. Obviously, they're not prepared. They don't have that preparedness mindset. So we're trying to help with that, and ultimately that helps everyone, whether you're a prepper or not, because when something happens and storms happen, hurricanes happen, anything like that happens, and everyone panics, that doesn't help anyone, right? So simply being prepared or spreading that message of preparation. So you don't have to be a doomsday prepper, you don't have to be a zombie apocalypse prepper to have a decent pantry where you don't panic anytime the slightest anything goes wrong, right? So that's the what, kind of dipping into the why we're doing the videos. So back into the what should you have in your pantry? And this is certainly a good item. Can opener for all the younger generation out there. If you've got cans that don't have the pop top, you need a can opener. I would recommend at least two, right? In prepping, there's what we call 2 as 1. I've had can openers break on me before, and maybe you have too. They don't necessarily always last forever. And if you got a bunch of canned goods and maybe they don't have the pop top and you lose your can opener, you can still open them, but nothing's going to be as convenient to open as an actual can opener. So go 2 as 1. Make sure you don't just have one can opener or no can openers and you've been buying canned goods, right? So I want to jump into, I mentioned short-term, mid-term, long-term a couple times. So what does that mean? Well, a short-term prep, and I don't know if I can grab one right away. Short-term prep in my mind is something that doesn't have a longer expiration date, right? We looked at Twinkies. I was thinking maybe I had the Twinkies here. But if it has a month or 2 month or 3 month, 4 month expiration date, that's something you're going to put on the pantry, but you're probably going to want to use before it expires, right? The goal is to use it before it expires so we can talk about best by dates and expiration dates and what that means. You're going to have short-term items, right? Not everything you're buying probably is going to last forever. So you want to identify, hey, these are short-term items in my pantry, right? Short-term food items, calories, you want to keep in the front. You want to be aware of those short-term items. Short-term items are fine, right? We buy short-term items all the time. If you buy fresh fruit, if you buy salad, if you buy vegetables, any of that kind of stuff that's going to sit in the refrigerator, sit out, any kind of baked goods, bread, it's all short-term, right? It's totally fine, but be aware that, hey, this is a short-term item. This is not a long-term food storage item, right? It's not going to last forever. I need to keep it. Don't put it in the back of don't stick a loaf of bread and a bag of potatoes in the back of your pantry and forget about it. That's not going to go well, right? But short-term items are absolutely part of your pantry. Then we move into mid-term items, and when I'm talking about mid-term items, I'm talking about things like canned good that could have years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, maybe 10 years. You know, if you had to put a line in the midterm, might be 6 months to 5 years. It could be 6 months to 10 years, right? So this has a best by date of 2024. On tomatoes, if I grab, say, some oysters here, I think these have an even better best by date, 2026, right? So we're still have a good 2-3 years, say, on the oysters, maybe a year left on the tomatoes. So this is my midterm food storage. Now, a lot of people say canned goods last forever, they last 5 years, they last 10 years. I'm putting them in midterm, right? They're probably still good after the best by date. As I've said in the other videos, if you watch any of our Prepper Pantry series, you have to be aware, right? Does it look good? Does it smell good? Is it covered in mold and rot? How's the taste? Certainly you want to do the look and the smell before you just taste it. It may still be good, right? And some people say canned goods last forever, and that's okay. I'm not arguing that point right now, but to me, I'm putting it in a midterm range, right? These are good in your pantry, right, to have the canned goods. We did do a video comparing home canning, which I've got over here. This is home canned chicken. The cost and the quality of canning your own chicken, right? So this is back into the what, is much higher than buying cans of canned chicken, which I also have back here somewhere. It's cheaper, you get more, and it's higher quality, right? So when you're building out your pantry, your canned meats, I would highly recommend you think about canning your own. There's the cost of buying the canning equipment, But if you're building a pantry, if you do it a lot, you're going to save money, right? We did a couple videos looking at things like canned meats compared to fresh meats that you can yourself, and you save a ton of money when you can it yourself. There's not a lot of meat in the cans. Like here's a can of roast beef right here. Broke it all down in the video. That's not the point of this video necessarily, but just be aware of what you're getting, right? And that's what we do. Prepper Pantry Pick of the Week is look at the calories and the cost per calorie per can, and we use 1,500 calories as the baseline to stay above the starvation limit. We say 2,000 calories average per day. So if you want to know how much food you have in your pantry, you want to say, hey, how many people, like you say, oh, what do I need for a year's worth of food for 4 people? Well, if you use 2,000 calories a day, which is considered the average and really depends on you, right? You might need more calories, you might need less calories. I've had people jumping in comments saying, I don't need 2,000 calories a day, I'm fine. Sure, right? No worries on that, right? I'm not saying you have to eat 2,000 or you even have to eat 1,500, but there are averages, right? And if you have 4 people in your family, you say, hey, I need 8,000 calories a day using 2,000 calories. You can multiply that by 365 and you get how many calories you would need, for a year's worth of food, and most foods have the calories on it. So there is math you can do. You have a 6-month pantry, do you have a 1-year pantry, do you have a 2-year pantry? Now 1,500 calories is what they consider the starvation limit. So you want to stay above that, and once again, that depends on you. So short-term, mid-term, right? We talked on mid-term. Once again, canned goods might last 5 years, 10 years. I'm still calling them mid-term. So the long-term food storage item are things like freeze-dried, where this could last 20 or 30 years, right? So you're probably not rotating these as much, depending on how old you are. There might be a few people that say, yeah, man, I bought them and they expired and I had to get new ones. For sure, it's 20, 30 years, but some of us are old enough that 20, 30 years have passed since we started prepping. I'm a 2nd-generation prepper, so I've been prepping my whole life. My dad's been prepping his life, and I'm sure he's got stuff that's expired, but I'm still calling that long-term. You don't have to rotate it every year, right? It might not even be something you eat normally because you might not eat it in that year. So you do want to approach short-term, mid-term, long-term differently, right? And then there's other items. We talked about mason jars, canning your own meats, which I would recommend, vegetables, all of that stuff. There's not hard to do the math. You look at what it costs fresh, compare that to what you get in the can. And then once you have your mason jars, the cost of canning something is a lid, and that's maybe 50 cents, maybe less. It really depends on what you're looking at. So it doesn't cost a lot to can once you have your canner, you have your mason jars. So it's really, the question is it cheaper to go fresh or is it cheaper to buy a can? And so far, most of the time we're finding it's probably cheaper to go fresh and can it yourself, and that just seems to be the world we live in. So that's mason jars. Another popular option are Mylar bags. We do a lot of Mylar bags. We've done video on Mylar bags. I'm not going to pull one of these buckets out, but you can do a 5-gallon Mylar bag in a 5-gallon bucket. You can do 1-gallon Mylar bags, put them on the shelf if you wanted to. There's different sizes. If you take a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, which doesn't apply to every food, things like sugar and salt, you probably don't want to do that with. That's going to extend the shelf life because you're blocking the sunlight. You're getting rid of the oxygen absorber. Mylar bags are good for long-term storage, and we would highly recommend that. So we've done some videos on storing food in Mylar bags. The other option you see people talking about for the long-term food storage is freezer bags. And freezer bags are not necessarily meant for long-term food storage. If that's all you've got, go with it, right? You have to do you. You have to live within your means of what you can do. They just don't generally last as long as, say, a Mylar bag. They're more likely to leak air. I would say freezer bags are good for putting stuff in the freezer. Once again, if that's all you've got, it's better than not, right? You can dry can, or dry pack. Dry can and dry pack are two different things. Dry pack is when you put your dry goods in a can, mason jar, and suck the oxygen out or put an oxygen absorber. Dry packing is good. Dry canning is actually a process where people try to put their dry goods in a mason jar and just kind of bake it a little bit in the oven. You're not supposed to do that, but once again, you have to do you. Not recommending it. So another one, we said home canning for shelf stable, right? Pricing, how to afford, right? How to afford your pantry. Hey, I don't have a lot of money. And we look at that. We go through that Prepper Pantry pick of the week all the time. There's a lot of options out there, and we got another video we're working on right now where it's $1 a day, right? If you're willing to look at that, sometimes it's 50 cents a day. If you bake at home and you buy flour, you can hit that 2,000 calorie mark for 50 cents a day. And I've got one over here. I'm not going to drag it over. You get the big bags of rice, if you still can, at places like Costco or Sam's Club. You can get down to 50 cents a day per person, right? If you're buying the canned roast beef, you're going to pay a lot more, right? And we did a video on that. You say, well, yeah, because this is only 350 calories, so I need 10 cans, and say they're $4 each. That's $40 for a day. I think it's like 20, but I'm just throwing numbers out there now, making it up as I go along. Sure, that's going to be real hard. It's going to be hard to build a long-term pantry if you're looking at $10-20 a day per person. But when you're looking at things like flour, rice, beans, those kind of things, where it might be $1 or less per day per person, that have that medium range or even long range shelf life, you can build it up over time. Right, so if a bag of rice sealed in Mylar lasts 20 years and it costs you 50 cents a day to eat, even if you only spend a couple dollars a week or even a couple dollars a month, well, you're getting 4 days worth of storage a month. If you do $2 a month on your long-term pantry and you just buy rice, that's 4 days worth of food. So at the end of the year, times 12, you got 24, you got 48. You have a month, 48 days worth of food for $2 a month, right? So you can build that long-term pantry. I said every week we try to give you options for that. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a ton of money. You just have to be smart about what you're buying and how you're storing it. If you buy a bunch of short-term preps, you eat them or they go bad, and you're not building that long-term pantry, right? But that certainly is short-term. I said don't not get short-term stuff. You need that to survive every day. So I hope that helps out. I said we want to just jump in on long-term food storage, prepper pantry stocking. So once again, we appreciate you. We appreciate you for watching. Enjoy the comments. If you feel like leaving a comment, of course, like and subscribe. All right, appreciate you.